So I have to divulge a secret. What I and Dr. Julia was talking, the conversation was that there is a very low participation of women in the hall. Uh, why I'm making this statement is this, because Tanya gave me feedback when we had last energy summit. There was no female speakers. So this time around we made sure that Tanya comes forth. Vaishali came in the morning. Unfortunately, energy sector has less female participation, and which is and Sujata, in one of the sessions. So this time around, we did slightly better. I hope you will forgive me, Tanya, this time. Tanya, now let's come to the business. India's renewable energy has already seen one circle of the entrepreneurs becoming the real players, and they are now getting into manufacturing, diversifying into a lot of spaces. Vaishali was here in the morning. So renewable, Renew is perfect example of how a startup can mature into a real player and mature player, and now they are actually developing an ecosystem where a lot of young entrepreneurs are trying their hands into various technologies. You come as a second generation entrepreneur. Second generation in the sense, sector's second generation. When sector got mature, cycle got over, you came into the second cycle. By that time, globally ecosystem had developed. Financial markets became very used to, because I still remember in 2010, I used to have conversation with Sumant saying that banks don't differentiate between conventional energy vis-a-vis renewable energy. Now we are all seeing products like MIGA coming forth, World Bank coming forth, giving differential products. Then Indian banks are also differentiating. Their guarantees are different. So banks have also matured. But still there are pain points. When we talk about the finance side, finance is still complicated. Last month, World Bank at their annual meeting, they had a conversation on how to bring in the blended finance into the global renewable ecosystem. Then we are also talking about International Solar Alliance, talking about how to how to accelerate renewable demand from various geographies where scale is very small. But Indian entrepreneur system does need a lot of support, not only from government but also from many of these institutions. How do you see? You have already completed one circle. Yes. You have already sold one of your business successfully, but you are continuing into the clean and renewable space. So how do you see this space taking shape in next 4 to 5 years? And what cautions do you see that the ecosystem need to make sure that the journey is smooth?
Got it. Thank you, Annalisha, and very good evening to all of you. Before I answer your question, just to be sure we're all here, a simple raise of hands. How many of you today believe that solar is cheaper than coal? Okay, so I see almost 100% of the room hand is open. Let me go back to 2010. If I would have said at that time, when coal was at 2.5 rupees and solar was at 18 rupees, that you'll be sitting in 2025 and renewable or solar will be cheaper than coal, how many of you at that time would have said that, yes, this is possible? Well, I see 10% of the hands up. And that's exactly the history which is repeating again. The infant of renewable has grown, has proven that with time and efficiency, you can scale up, frugally innovate, and bring the cost curve down to have power at sub-cheap coal prices. The same question is being now asked to storage, to green hydrogen, to EVs, to EV financing, and it's like the history repeating itself. And that's the learning that the next generation entrepreneurs need to make. The first and the foremost core thesis is frugal innovations and patience, right? This is a cycle. Unfortunately, in a world of 10-minute delivery, everybody thinks that, oh, in 2 to 3 years, this should get done. And that's the mindset with which a lot of VCs sometimes come into picture. But climate tech as a solution typically is a cycle which takes 7 to 10 years. And once you're cognitive of that, and you explain that to your investors or to people who are coming on board with you, the situation changes. So there is a need of what we call patient capital. A capital which is not expecting returns very early on, is ready to stay with you for the course of the journey, because they understand the innovation cycles take time. I'll take a simple example, and a lot of you would have seen that. 2013, one of the solar plants I built, I would say it was almost like the Taj Mahal. The inverter rooms were air conditioned. We had hard paved road in the plants. And
Taj Mahal doesn't have air conditioning.
I know, but it was like just the best out there. And as you did this, you realize that no, you don't need it. You can have completely air-cooled inverters lying outside. You don't even need to pave your roads around. And that frugal innovation got built into this ecosystem slowly and gradually. And sometimes people say, oh, the panel prices fell down, China happened. But I say India happened. The engineering innovation came to it. The same set of cycles you are now seeing in the new tech that is coming on, right? Whether this is battery, whether it's green hydrogen, it's about solving for frugal innovation, and accepting that change will take time. So that's where the patience comes in. Let's also talk about a second core aspect that is important, which is what we call as blended capital. Today, we are at a legacy place where you can actually structure finance in a way that what you have is a first loss capital available, which can be anything like a catalytic finance or a development agency, the likes of the World Bank or the ISA, who come in and say that I will underwrite and take the first hit if something does not go right in your project. Which that means is now you have created a room for much larger amount of VC or private equity capital to come in, because they have a security that if something goes wrong, there is a first hit capital available, and I am then the second player. So this is the blended finance structure that is now coming in. It is supported by DFIs, it is supported by philanthropic organizations, and it's also supported a large part by what incentives the governments have been giving. We talk about the FAME2 scheme. We talk about the PLI scheme. You saw in solar how the VGF scheme did a large board by bringing the tariff down to 4.43 at a time when actually prevalent tariffs were 8 to 10 rupees. So that core need of blended finance is what you need to now redeploy and re-put in all the new upcoming solar technologies. So the core learnings I feel is frugal innovation, having interesting financing structures which are both patient and blended in nature, and accepting and realizing that this is a game of persistence, that you have to be in it, keep innovating, and eventually lead the curve there.
So let's bring Subbu into a conversation. Subbu, the term she is using, patient capital, but for capitalists, it's a high-risk capital. And the largest risk which many of these funds see is India's policy and regulations. And third is, the infrastructure, transmission and other things. We still face, the policy and regulation roadblocks. You have been working with the government on various fronts. What is the thought like? And secondly, also help us in understanding, have state improved their, efficiency, states?
I mean, both are very tough questions to answer in such a short time, but maybe let me give you some context. Today, we've heard in the previous panel, Mr. Winter also elaborated very passionately about what is to be done with storage. India has seen, maybe after our independence, our power markets have been almost constant until the renewable energy revolution started. And if everything goes well, in the next 6 years, we will add more renewables than what we have added in our total generation in the last 70 years of our independence. So that is the scale at which we are operating. And our renewable energy in itself, we have now graduated from a very nascent teething problem oriented state to a more matured market. Today, India is the third largest market in the world. We are only trailing the Americans and the Chinese. And if things don't go well in US, like they are not going well, we might become number 2 very soon. So our market has evolved, our policy making has evolved, so did our regulatory framework. It is without a doubt the matter of the fact still remains that our initial regulations and policies have evolved by the way we looked at conventional. In the same prism we've looked renewables. Today we don't either have the luxury or we are not at that stage to ignore the gigantic growth of renewables in our country. So that is the context I wanted to give. Policy and regulatory wise, I think we have today settled down. We do have a visibility. We know what we're going to do in the next 5 years. We know what are our priorities in generation, what we're going to do in transmission, what is the thing that we're going to add in storage, where are we going in manufacturing. So maybe in our endeavor to arrive at a stable policy and regulatory framework, we might have had our own problems in the last 4 or 5 years, but starting 2023, 2024, I personally see the visibility for investors, the risk capital and the patient capital, which Tanya was also alluding to. Today, that kind of visibility is there. On the second aspect of your question, what is the role of states? Again, pardon me for going back to the analogy of 2 phases of our journey. In the initial days of our renewable journey, the center was at the center of energy transition. There was no doubt. Today, very, very fortunately, the states have become the center of energy transition. 3 driving factors. First, of course, we had ISTS waiver, we had more centralized policy, more centralized regulations that were trust upon or have been advised upon states, and early movers took advantage. Whoever joined recently understood, I should have taken a more advantage of it before. The second part is, today, and it is very unique to our country, as we are speaking here today, COP negotiations are going on the other side of our world. We are the only country where climate change is a bipartisan issue. It is accepted by both sides, it is validated by both sides, and both of them agree renewable energy is the solution. So we have never faced any anti-renewable energy so far at state level, and states have realized that this is their best bet at combating the future harmful effects of climate change. Third, and the most important, which was resonating in the room since morning, cost factor. India has shown to the world what will happen if you accompany a very comprehensive, integrated approach in policy with scale. Barring our neighboring country, we are the only country in the world which has shown to the world what can be done and the manner in which it can be done. So these 3 factors are now increasing states' involvement in renewables, and in storage, of course, most of it has been said before, but storage has also actually woken up some states. Today the VGF, the viability gap funding for storage, is directly going to states, and whatever figures were quoted, those figures were quoted at state bid level. Imagine for a renewable energy, IPP bids at state discom level, what was the situation 7-8 years ago or 11 years ago. So this is actually a testament to the maturity at which we have arrived. We do have, as a country, we have a 2047 goal of Viksit Bharat as a developed nation. I think in renewables and electricity, we are already a developed nation. We only have today first world problems. With all other teething problems no longer.
When Subbu, I said that policy and regulation stuff, so 2-3 things came to my mind. Obviously, I will ask this same question to the minister as well, but I'm just trying to validate my hypothesis. See, for last 1 year, for the first time in Prime Minister Modi's regime, we are seeing 2 ministers. One is governing power, largely transmission, and secondly is the MNRE. And in last 1 year, we have seen a lot of confrontations on transmission side. And then there are constraints. Then they suddenly come up with the diktat that they are cancelling many of the things. Then, there are issues related to the wheeling charges. Wind has already gone through that pain. So this must be worrying investors as well as the startups. because many big players still can maneuver. They can offset and they can even delay the projects. Because I had a conversation with a very large player. So he was saying that even if they cancel, this is something around 20-25 crores hit, I'll manage. But 25 crores for a startup is a big money. So does these type of developments, worry the Indian startups that now maybe the fault lines are emerging? And especially when, there is another factor that Indian thermal is, utilized at 70 or 60 to 70 PLF, and their investments are also stuck. And Power Ministry's, main mandate is to manage them rather than the renewables. So does these type of conversation worry Indian startups?
I mean, you have put me at a very tight spot just before Honorable Minister speaks, but maybe he will be answering on behalf of government, and I don't elude my comments that. But two parts of your question.
I expect you to talk on the behalf of entrepreneurs.
I will. That's exactly what I'm going to do. See, the bifurcation of having two ministers can be seen in one way as that we now have a dedicated minister for renewable energy, which means it is a testament to government support for renewable energy. This is one way of it. I mean, I'm always a glass half full guy, but I strongly believe on the other part that you mentioned, whatever has been going on in the news with respect to pending PPAs and all, there is a lot more than what meets the eye here. See, pending PPAs, cancellation and all, I would not like to get into more details because the process, what are the conditions, they're all already predefined. Whatever has come out in the news, I would personally strongly, vehemently oppose the way it was reported. The transmission versus generation, whatever the catch-up game is, what you say is a setback, I would term it as a recalibration. Because, see, we have a trajectory of 2030 target. We also have a trajectory of year-wise target. We also have a trajectory of transmission target. There are some instances where in between 1 or 2 years, while we must have achieved the bidding target, we must have fallen short on the transmission target. And that is evidently visible. So whatever quantum that needs to catch up, eventually 1 year later when we both sit, we'll have a very big laugh about what was happening today and what will happen then. But coming back to your most important question on entrepreneurs and the perception they have. And you were right when you said this is a new generation or second generation of entrepreneurs. So if I can put it, the first generation of RE entrepreneurs in our country were generation entrepreneurs. The second generation need not be generation. They have distribution, storage, transmission, operation maintenance, manufacturing. That is where there is scope. Today, when the country is installing, by the time we complete this conversation, we would have installed 45 megawatt. In the last 30 minutes, we installed 45 megawatt. That is the pace at which we are installing. But we need to operate, maintain and ensure every megawatt is converted into megawatt hour. That is a huge opportunity for startups. Modules, materials. Our neighboring countries, including Germany, are today working on materials that can give us 1.3 to 1.5 times more power from the same area. So these are the places where I definitely think entrepreneurs should come forward. We just, the last thing I wanted to say before I conclude is the National Institute of Solar Energy and NSCFI, we just set up our incubation center on these new age technologies for renewable energy, so that we are able to convey a message to the entrepreneurs that these are all the areas where you still have scope. And these are, I'm not saying they are not risky, but the risk is worth taking.
So I'll just add to what Subbu said, a simple small point. The power of AI in today's world in climate tech is stemming a lot of the entrepreneurial ventures. For a simple fact that now you can create an operational efficiency layer on top of the asset layers that are already sitting in a very capital intensive manner. Right? A lot of the times entrepreneurs used to stay away from the industry because they used to say, oh, this is a very high capital demand industry. And that is changing. You know, from saying, oh, I will think about grid digitization, to say, I will define systems to when to store energy, when to release, how can I trade so that I get the best of daytime power, how do I ensure operational efficiencies, how do I take storage as a distributed solution? How do I make EV possible in terms of charging infrastructure? Like AI can integrate all of these different things and bring an operational efficiency layer, scheduling, forecasting, to the degree of saying predictive maintenance. Everything can be done through that lens, and that's where a big entrepreneur wave is coming. You know, I always see that solar followed what we call an S curve, right? First, entrepreneurs came in, took the bets, got the risk out of the system, proved that the business model exists, there is a value prop here. And once that was established is when large corporates, conglomerates, and even global players came in. That exact field is now being replicated. And that's what the second level entrepreneurs are learning. To say, what innovation can I do in a more technical world of AI that can build a layer on this, that I use this S-curve technology and get the backing of other players after my innovation is done.
Okay, and I get your point, but you know, there is a one thread which I wanted to pull from his conversation is the recalibration part. So you had been, you know, one of the entrepreneurs. When such recalibration happens, what goes through entrepreneur's mind?
I mean,
let Tanya.
So when you say recalibration, you mean in terms of the tariffs or?
Recalibration in terms of what we were talking about policy, that which way India should move, and suddenly you see the PPS getting cancelled, transmission becoming difficult.
So first and foremost, there is so much backslash, but the reality is in India, till now, not a single PPA that has been signed has not been paid for. Right? There was a lot of times debate on saying, oh, you're signing 15 rupees, 13 rupees, 10 rupees PPA, will they ever be paid for, right? So that's a hard fact that needs to be accepted. What is not happening is that you have bid something and that is not getting signed, right? That creates a emotional insecurity, which is where new markets are featuring up. The whole CNI market, the whole daytime trading power market, the whole market of saying, can I store and create 24-hour power solutions that can then completely take you off the grid through microgrids or power the whole system on its own. So it's all about innovating in the constraints of where you are. Earlier, first the constraints were that you didn't have the economic viability, so you needed support. Now you have that. So now with that economic viability, what different models can you build is the next level of question.
So, you know, many of the players who come to you for guidance today, you know, they are young as, you know, Tanya, who wants to get into, you know, this space. So what are the caution notes you give them that, you know, look for these fault lines and then only get into the business? Because many of the players comes to us, they see, you know, the states coming forth with a lot of projects. They want to get in there, but they are not equipped enough, and they are generally diversifying their funds from their either parents' businesses, or you know, they are passionate about renewables but don't have the understanding. So how do you, you know, build the conversation with them? Tell them that okay, these all are the fault lines. Don't go by the what is glittering. You know, look for, you know, these fault lines in the tenders, business models, and look for these technologies to amplify many of the technologies which she has already listed. So how do you deal with it?
I mean, my top priority advice would be to actually understand the entire landscape, because very often, including our conversation, we restrict the total scale of renewable energy, the prospects of entrepreneurship in renewable energy to installation itself. Exactly. We are not able to look beyond it. I mean, that of course has its own context and why we have been looking at it since last 2-3 decades. But I would definitely suggest them to look at the entire landscape, because today generation is not the only part of the entire story anymore. Generation is part of it, but there are more valuable aspects where an entrepreneur can add value. The second part is stick to basics, because India today needs homegrown technology that drives our energy transition. We for a long period of time, we have always been followers in technology. What we did in automobiles, what we have done in pharma, what we have done in IT, the time has come for us to do now in energy transition, especially renewable energy. Any technology oriented startup in renewables today, if India is actually like a pilot playing ground for them. If you're able to test it out and if you're able to prove in India, you can prove at anywhere in the world, and I'm sure Tanya will definitely endorse what I said.
Exactly, the S-curve.
And the last point is, we should be in a position to actually judge the depth of our market by ignoring the noise and only concentrating on the substantial part that comes out. Because very often than not, like if we forget to see the bigger picture and we ascribe our ideas, or we frame our ideas based on some of the aberrations that are projected or the noise that comes onto you, it might be demoralizing for entrepreneurs. So they should stick to the basics and figure out your own niche or your own genre in that. I myself have started my career as an entrepreneur in solar. When our tariffs were 8-9 rupees, I was selling monitoring devices and plants. Today, of course, that is a different story today. But the moment you're able to figure out your value add in a market which is as price sensitive and competitive as India, and you're able to deliver that value, I'm 100% sure we'll have more unicorns in our service sector in renewables than ever before.
You know, India's solar story is very similar to India's mobile story, but only difference is that efficiency is much higher in the solar side vis-a-vis the telecom story. But you know, it is wonderful talking to both of you, full of energy, full of new ideas. And obviously, you know, you gave us very stimulating thoughts. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Subbu. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.